must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
A very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for joining us. This is Diaspora Dispatches, where we get to look at the news making headlines across the continent that is Africa. My name is Miriam Gutu, and we're coming to you all the way from Kenya's capital here in Nairobi. A rather chilly afternoon here. I think this is what we call a winter in Africa, but it's not really winter. It's just a bit of cold, but not too much. Thank you so much, wherever you're watching us from. So let's just get into it, and we start with the news from Mali, where the war crimes trial for the former head of Islamic police in the Malian city of Timbuktu has started at the International Criminal Court. Al-Hassan Ag Abdulaziz headed the Islamic police when it was under the control of an Islamist militant in 2012. He has been charged in The Hague with war crimes, crimes against humanity, rape and sexual slavery. Girls were allegedly forced to marry militants. Now the Islamic police commanders are also believed to have ordered the destruction of historic monuments and buildings dedicated to Islam. And then still staying with Mali, and the authorities in Mali have released some 20 protest leaders who are detained for seeking the resignation of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, their lawyers have said. Now the activists were arrested last week after 3 days of violent clashes in the capital Bamako between demonstrators and the security forces that left at least 11 people dead. The United Nations and the African Union were among several organizations who called for the protest leaders to be released. There has been reports of renewed gunfire on Monday, and President Keïta is under mounting pressure to step aside over disputed elections in Mali and his failure to subdue militia violence. And then we move to Ethiopia, and the new satellite images appear to show a rise in water levels in the reservoir of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam built on the River Nile. The $5 billion hydropower project is at the center of dispute between Ethiopia, Egypt, and Sudan. Talks to end the decade-old row ended on Monday with no agreement on key technical concerns raised by Egypt and Sudan. The new satellite images taken between 27th of June and 12th July show a steady increase in the amount of water being held back by the dam. And we move to Zimbabwe, where the authorities in Zimbabwe have banned a planned anti-corruption march organized by the main opposition party MDC Alliance. The state-owned Herald newspaper has reported. It quotes Information Minister spokesperson Nick Mangwana as saying that the march scheduled for the 31st of July is a subversion of the constitutional order. What is being planned for July 31st, that is what Mangwana said, will not be allowed to happen, and the state has apparatus that are in place to ensure that the constitutional order is maintained. And President Emerson Mnangagwa last week sacked Health Minister Obadiah Moyo for inappropriate conduct over $60 million medicine supply scandal, and the minister has not responded to the allegations yet. And we cross over to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where police in the DRC on Monday arrested dozens of people protesting against a parliament's nomination of Ronsard Malonda as the head of the National Electoral Commission, that is CHENI. The opposition accuses Mr. Malonda, currently CHENI's Secretary General, of playing a role in rigging previous elections in favor of former President Joseph Kabila. Now, the country's parliament is dominated by Mr. Kabila's supporters, and the protests, which were also about proposed judicial reforms, were led by the main opposition Lamuka coalition. Now, the renewed protest came just days after at least 3 people were killed during last week's demonstrations against the choice of the electoral chairperson. And then we come back to Sudan, and Sudan has declared a state of emergency in the western region of Darfur according to state media. The move follows an escalation of clashes between demonstrators and security forces after weeks of protest. The African Union, United Nations mission in Darfur, said it had sent a team to the town of Khartoum following the reported burning of police station and cars. On Sunday, security forces fired live rounds of ammunition to disperse another protest, reportedly killing 5 people. Now, there has been peace demonstrations and sit-ins in many parts of the region, calling for the dismissal of corrupt officials and the withdrawal of armed militias from the towns and villages. And we go to Somalia, where Somalia's army chief has survived a suspected suicide car bomb targeted his convoy in Mogadishu. An attacker detonated a device after the convoy of the army boss fired at him when he tried to get near them. The attack happened near Gordon military camp on Monday, and some pictures of the scene have been shared online. And then we go to the Ivory Coast, where Ivory Coast Vice President Daniel Kablan-Duncan has stepped down. His resignation follows the sudden death of Prime Minister Amadou Gon Coulibaly last week. Now, the Secretary General of the Ivory Coast Presidency, Patrick Archie, said that Mr. Kablan-Duncan was leaving for reasons of personal convenience. The Vice President had put his resignation letter to President Alassane Ouattara in February, but Mr. Archie noted after several communications last of which took place on the 7th of July 2020, the President of the Republic took a note of his resignation and proceeded to sign the decree terminating Daniel Kablan-Duncan, and that was a part of the statement by Mr. Archie there. Now, Mr. Kablan was appointed Vice President in 2017, the first to occupy the new position created by a new constitution the previous year following a referendum. He had previously served as a Prime Minister. And then we head to Nigeria, where doctors in Nigeria's Lagos state have started a 3-day strike over safety fears during the coronavirus pandemic. A chairman of the Medical Guild, Dr. Oluwajini Asodipo, told the BBC that doctors on the front line dealing with patients infected with COVID-19 are at a risk, and the government needs to act quickly to address their safety fears. They are asking for adequate personal protective equipment, insurance, and prompt testing of health workers. Dr. Sodipo said the doctors working in COVID-19 isolation centers in Lagos are owed 2 months of their wages. And still staying with Nigeria, and the representative of Kaduna South Senatorial District in the National Assembly, Senator Danjuma La, on Tuesday raised a fresh concern over the unending killings in his constituency. La, who raised a point of order during plenary, lamented that his people were being massacred daily by some bandits who seem to have overpowered the security operatives in the area. He specifically urged the Senate to direct security agencies and the military in the country to dispatch more personnel to the troubled areas to ensure peace. Ruling on the point of order, Senate President Ahmad Lawan condemned the incensed killings in the area and urged the security agencies to arrest the situation. And we go to Cameroon, where the mayor of Bouer, David Mafany Naumange, on Monday, July 13th, embarked on an operation to seal shops that have been respecting Ghost Town. From one spot to the other, the mayor and his team sealed shops that have been respecting the Monday Ghost Towns imposed by the Anglophones. And now all persons whose businesses were sealed are expected at the council premises on today, where they will pay a penalty and sign an undertaking before their businesses were reopened. And anybody from Cameroon or from the Anglophone part of Cameroon there, you would know what I'm talking about. And a very good afternoon to you. So now, the government of Cameroon has gone on there through the mayor of Bouer, saying this Ghost Mondays is something that it will not be encouraged anymore there. So let me know what you think. And then we go to Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe has fired top executives of the country's 5 biggest state hospitals as part of restructuring exercise, the Health Services Board said a week after the health minister was dismissed following corruption allegations. Millions of Zimbabweans rely on government hospitals for healthcare, but the institutions face perennial shortages of drugs and basic equipment. Nurses have been on strike for better pay since June. Health Services Services Board Chair Palinas Sikosana told state broadcaster ZBC on Monday that the dismissal of the chief executives and several directors at state hospitals in Harare and Bulawayo was meant to improve operational efficiency, effectiveness, and accountability. And there you go. So that is just the latest in this continent. So if you have anything out there that you think I should know of, please kindly share with me, and I'll share with the rest of our viewers. So now let's look at a few of these stories that I just read to you, shall we? And we start with before we get to Nigeria, there's some news here that I found to be very very interesting, or rather, this news from Ethiopia. Now it appears as though we know there has been a tussle about the Grand Renaissance Dam, and Egypt. This is something that has gone on for 10 years when this dam was under construction. So it started before even Abiy Ahmed became the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, and this is a project, a mega project that the country embarked on, so that they are able to provide the country with enough power. It is a hydropower project that has costed the country nearly $5 billion. So that is a lot of investment, and they've been doing it for over a period of time. So now when it came to near completion, of course, the dispute escalated to levels and that I had not seen before. There has been a bit of, the dispute has lasted that, but it had not escalated to the levels you're seeing it today. So for 10 years now, for nearly 10 years now, when this dam has been under construction. So we see right now, Egypt has not been very happy with it. It has been trying to galvanize support from the Arab world, the Arab League, from the US, from all its friends across who, it was hoping would influence Ethiopia to think differently. What I don't understand is how actually Egypt, and I think this is something that I've said here over and over and over and over, how Egypt thought that after embarking on this very ambitious project, Ethiopia did, spend all this money it has spent. A lot of it, I'm sure, even has been borrowed or from whatever, but it's a lot of money, right? So once this dam was nearly 70% to be completed, now Egypt decides, okay, this dam cannot be filled up. This dam, no. So that was sometimes back last year. So now I think the dam is complete. And now from what can be seen from satellite images shows that the water is slowly beginning to fill up, because Ethiopia was waiting for July, where usually that part of Africa, they experience a lot of rains during this time. So it has hoped that when the heavy rain starts, that will be the time that Ethiopia will start filling in the reservoir. So you could say on one hand, Ethiopia was being a bit considerate because, Egypt relies on River Nile for its supply. I think 80% of supply of Egypt's water comes from River Nile. So this is a very important, source of water for Egypt, but also it passes through, Sudan and Ethiopia, and we see this, and Egypt has claimed a lot of, I think a lot of. I think influence over River Nile. So now they're not happy that Ethiopia is about to start filling up. But from what we see, because I think of the rains that have been happening, the dam has started filling up and the levels continue to rise and to rise. And now that goes back to the question that I've kept asking here. Did actually Egypt think that after Ethiopia embarking on this project and spending all this money and all these years working on this, that it will not actually fill this, hydro power project here at the Grand Renaissance Dam? I mean, that is, I didn't see how that was going to be possible, because at the end of the day, I think Ethiopia is looking at the interest and how that dam will serve the purposes and in terms of supplying power and all that comes with that, and what that will mean for the industries, for the households, for the economy of Ethiopia. And on the other hand, of course, Egypt is also looking at the same. And so I think it's a little bit too late for Egypt. And Egypt has been trying to convene some meetings that have been ended without any resolution. So Ethiopia, I think, has gone ahead and has started filling up this dam. So it will be interesting to see what other turn Egypt will take, because it has really tried. The last time they were having the last meeting happened on Monday that ended with no resolution, and there was also a meeting like 2 weeks ago that Egypt had convened in the Arab world. The last I checked, Ethiopia is not even in the Arab world. So, and the Arab world came out and spoke in one voice and say, Ethiopia, you should stop feeling that dam, and you should, consider and all of that. So this has been something that has been going on. And also we saw earlier, I think in the year, Egypt approaching the US to mediate over this matter. And at that time, I think Al-Sisi was still the chairperson of the African Union, and I would have thought that would have perhaps been a great opportunity, him being at the helm of this very important African institution, to try and find a mechanism within here in Africa and find a solution for a misunderstanding or a problem involving African countries. But he did not even have confidence in an institution that he himself was heading, and so he took this matter to the US, and of course the US tried mediating. Of course the US was biased, and it was supporting Egypt. So Ethiopia, backed off from those talks. So nothing really happened. So I think this is a losing battle for Egypt, as I have kept saying, because at this point, there is too much investment on the side of Ethiopia for them not to actually fill up the dam and start having the gains that are supposed to be coming from that. So I think it's a little too late there. They could find a way, perhaps filling the dam slowly, just slowly. But what also the satellite images is showing is that a lot of water is being held back, by the dam. It's not going with the force and with the flow that it used to on that side going to Egypt. So I'm sure in just a few, maybe very soon, I will hear Egypt coming out and protesting that. But I think it's just a little bit too late. They should find a way to agree. All right, Ethiopia, if you want to go on to fill this dam up, then perhaps you should fill this much amount, so that as much as the flow of the river will be affected, but not so much that we will feel the effect on the other side, so that both of us get to be served. Egypt still gets its water, and Ethiopia still gets to fill its dam, but in a way that nobody really suffers. So I think that is something that they have refused to come to agree with. And I think that is what Ethiopia has been trying to have Egypt understand. But Egypt has been very adamant. It does not want any water filling that dam at all. So there you have it. I think at some point they have to come to a compromise and agree. The Grand Renaissance Dam is there, the Nile River is here, and it passes through the Grand Renaissance Dam. The way it has been built, both sides, the Nile River passes in between. So they have to come to a compromise and find a working formula that will benefit both countries. It's quite interesting there. And so Zimbabwe has banned the planned anti-corruption march organized by the main opposition party, MDC Alliance. What I don't understand is, why does anybody think this will be the right time to organize any kind of, protest, whether anti-corruption, whether what? Because Zimbabwe has really tried in curbing the spread of COVID-19, and as we know, Zimbabwe is the way it is today. And as much as the figures are low, I think yesterday it surpassed the 1,000 mark, and right now the cases there are at 1,034, and the death toll in Zimbabwe is 19. Recovery stands at 343. So Zimbabwe is doing fairly well compared to even a country like Kenya. We've seen our figures just keep going up day by day, and other countries in Africa. So Zimbabwe is doing relatively well in terms of controlling, the spread of COVID-19, and it should be encouraged. And knowing and understanding the already existing problems in the health sector, all sectors of Zimbabwe have been affected so much because of the financial crunch that the country has been going through for now a couple of years. Even before President Mnangagwa came into power, the inflation there is just over the top compared to any other country across the world. So it has been going through so much. And we know that the healthcare system in Zimbabwe, they could not even afford the basic, of drugs. Zimbabweans had to cross over to South Africa to access even the basic of medical attention because the country could not offer it. So our worry was, should the numbers there in Zimbabwe go up, what will happen to an already collapsed, health system and other systems that are supportive to that are not really functioning because of lack of money and because of the hard times financially Zimbabwe is going through. So we applaud the government of Zimbabwe because of the measures it put in place in time. And the figures have not really spiked up compared to other African countries. So what I'm wondering is why anybody in their right mind there in Zimbabwe, and I understand, and there has been a lot of corruption cases. You've seen President Mnangagwa firing a few people. And now we saw earlier, I think there's a news there I just read about some, some people who are the top executives in the top government, 5 biggest hospitals in the country getting fired because of matters related to corruption and things like that, and inefficiency and accountability and all that. So it has the government of Zimbabwe has been trying, but also there has been some scandals surrounding even COVID-19 equipments and all that. Money is being stolen even in Kenya. That has happened, and it's such a shame that a few people would think this will be the time for them to benefit from an unfortunate situation such as COVID-19. So now the MDC, that is the official opposition party in Zimbabwe, is planning to go and protest and organize a march. And this march was supposed to take place on the 31st of July. And knowing very well that the government has banned any kinds of gathering, even here in Kenya. And unfortunately, I see it happening. I still see our politicians holding meetings, our politicians holding what looks like, political rallies, which goes against, the set rules that have been put in place and measures, to ensure that we are able to control the spread of COVID-19. And so calling on a march is just a bad idea. Please, the opposition of Zimbabwe, the country still is already going through so much. So calling on this march and organizing this march and this protest, as much as your issues might be legitimate and you might be having, a case there that you want to bring to the attention of President Mnangagwa, but can you try doing that through writing a letter? Have you tried other options, or just going out and protesting is, the fast and easy way for you to look like you're active and you're doing your job in Zimbabwe? And we're not against the freedom of movement and speech and all that. But this is not the time, please, because the numbers there in Zimbabwe, as much as they're relatively low, we don't want to see them spike like we have seen them spike. Right now, South Africa, which is one of the most well-developed in terms of health care systems and all that across Africa, is really, really struggling. Its healthcare system cannot even hold the surging numbers of COVID-19, and they have the facilities. So can you imagine what will happen in Zimbabwe if we have situations which will encourage a spike of numbers? So that is something that should be discouraged at the opposition there. Can you try writing to President Mnangagwa and tell him this is what you're seeing, this is the problem, and this is the solution we are proposing? Because sometimes a lot of oppositions in Africa, we're very quick to go condemn, we criticize, but we don't come with alternative solutions. Tell President Mnangagwa, this is not working. This person you put in this place is not working very well, is not serving the people of Zimbabwe very well. But also, this is our alternative solution. Could you try this and see if that will work for the country? And because right now, organizing a protest is not something that is good for any country, not just in Zimbabwe, anywhere, because that will encourage the spread of COVID-19. And we're already seeing how much, this disease is ravaging countries and people across the world. We don't want to see such a situation in Zimbabwe. Suddenly, even right now, that is a situation we don't want to see in Zimbabwe. So we are hoping that that will be sorted out very, very soon. And I would encourage the opposition leaders there in Zimbabwe to just approach President Mnangagwa and try speaking to him, try raising these issues with him, and see if he will listen, because sometimes dialogue can can save us a lot of unnecessary headache there. So I'm just hoping that this march will not take place, not for anything, but just to help put COVID-19 in check, as the government there of Zimbabwe has done so far, and the people of Zimbabwe who have been cooperating with the measures that have been put in place. So we should encourage that, not just in Zimbabwe, but across, across Africa. So another situation I think that also people are watching, I think outside of what is happening in Mali, the protesters there have continued demanding for President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta to resign because of the elections that happened in March that are marred with a lot of irregularities, and then 30 of opposition, I think, members of parliament, the elections, even after they were declared winners, were nullified by the Constitutional Court. So that has sent, the people of Malawi, led by opposition in the streets, and they have been protesting, they have been marching, but also somewhere else now that we should turn our attention is in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So if it just, all right, let me just go through this story, and then perhaps I might explain a bit of what this probably might mean there in Congo. Now, police in the Democratic Republic of Congo on Monday arrested dozens of people protesting against Parliament's nomination of Ronsard Malonda as the head of the National Electoral Commission, that is Cheney. Now the opposition accuses Mr. Malonda, currently Cheney's Secretary General, of playing a role in rigging previous elections in favor of former President Joseph Kabila. The country's parliament is dominated by Mr. Kabila supporters. So if you don't understand why the people there are very uncomfortable with this person being elected as the new chair of the Electoral Commission of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Remember, elections before they happened on December 30th, I think 2018. That eventually produced Felix Tshisekedi. It was his win was very controversial. I remember the opposition leader there, Martin Fayulu, protested, went to court, challenged that, but even the Catholic Church came out and said Martin Fayulu, it's not Fayulu, but Fayulu won the elections there in 2018. It happened on December 30th, 2018. So before then, elections had been postponed 2 years prior, and President Joseph Kabila was not keen on having the elections done. And it is said that the Electoral Commission then, who this person, this Malonda, was the Secretary General then of the Electoral Commission of the DRC, they used to work in cahoots with President Kabila, of course, to rig the election and all that. So why this is now even becoming a problem is because even right now, as you speak, President Kabila is not the president of the Democratic Republic of Congo. But according to how Congo is and the setup of Congo and its politics, President Kabila has the majority in parliament, in Senate, in all seats. His party has the majority. Even in parliament, he has the majority. So if you have the majority in Congo, they're in parliament especially, then your party, the party that has the majority, which now is the party of former President Joseph Kabila, you produce the prime minister. And so that produced the prime minister. And also the party that has the majority also, whether it's in government or not, must form the bigger, chunk of the government appointments in terms of the ministers and all that. So as we speak right now, Kabila's party, even though he's not in power, has 63% of the slots in the ministerial slots in that country. So you understand, President Felix Tshisekedi's hands are a bit tied, and he's not able to work and do what he should be doing as he would have if he had the majority there. So that is the problem. So as much as former President Joseph Kabila is not the president now in the DRC, but still he controls the politics in that country. He controls parliament, he controls Senate, because he has the majority. And so we've seen, a bit of wrangling and misunderstanding because Felix Tshisekedi cannot be his own man. He does not have the numbers. And so the former president still continues to control everything, even the bills that are being brought and that are being discussed, through his parties and through his members who are the majority there in Parliament and in Senate. And now they are the majority also in the cabinet of, Felix Tshisekedi. So that is a headache. So I think Felix Tshisekedi has not been able to achieve a lot of things that he had promised the people of the DRC, because he does not have his hands tied. If I may use that analogy, his hands are tied. He cannot deliver as perhaps he should. And I would think that perhaps these people, may would want to sabotage, because remember, these are people he does not share the same vision with. When he was campaigning, they were campaigning on the opposition with President, former president. So they were not in the same camp. So they don't have the same manifesto. They don't have the same agenda. So President Tshisekedi cannot run his agenda and the things that he wanted and he had promised the people of the DRC, because he just can't, because of the composition of his government as it is today. So that is something that has been frustrating the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And very interesting to see the person that was leading this protest yesterday. I was shocked to see Bemba, who is just coming fresh from the ICC. He came back and he was the one forefront and center leading this protest yesterday. And I thought, has this person not learned anything? Remember, he was the vice president then the DRC, and he found himself, at the ICC, was being charged by, but he was acquitted there from the ICC, and he appears to be back. Among other opposition figures who had ran away from the DRC during the reigns of Kabila, and before that his father, they had disappeared and they came back. Among them, Moise Katumbi, who are very influential, political figures there in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So I think this is a ticking time bomb, another country that we should be paying close attention to, because of the recent even rise in militia activities and the killings and misplacements of people and insecurity. Is just the same as other countries, say South Sudan also is going through the same, but the DRC, things are not going on very well there, and so we shall be checking and see how this story will go on. Elvis, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for watching. And now, what is happening, Elvis Ayong? Because I know you're about to ask me what is happening there in Anglophone. So here's the news for you. The mayor of Buea, David Mafany Namange, on Monday, July 13th, embarked on an operation to seal shops that have been respecting the ghost town. From one spot to the other, the mayor and his team sealed shops that have been respecting the Mandi ghost towns imposed by Anglophones. Now, all persons whose businesses were sealed are expected at the council premises on Tuesday, that is today, where they will pay a penalty and sign an undertaking before their businesses are reopened. So what the government of Paul Biya is saying is they're tired of your ghost Mondays. Remember, in Anglophone region, usually the ghost town is a day where no shops are opened, all businesses are closed, and no activities take place. I think it's a way to protest the things that have been happening there and the humanitarian crisis that have continued to happen there. So now the government came in yesterday, and every shop that was closed, they sealed it. They helped it close it, perhaps forever for you. And if you need it opened, then you have to go to the government offices and perhaps agree and listen to what they have to tell you and follow, I think, the directive that you'll be given for your shops to operate there. And Sudan, as we move to the next story, Sudan has declared a state of emergency in the western region of Darfur. This is according to state media. The move follows an escalation of clashes between demonstrators and security forces after weeks of protest. Now, the African Union and the United Nations mission in Darfur said it had sent a team to the town of Khartoum following the reported burning of a police station and cars. So we've seen there has been some talks that have been headed by South Sudan to try to bring peace. And this is something that I've never really understood, because South Sudan has been on the forefront. Well, I think it's a good thing that South Sudan has been trying to help Sudan, and also Sudan has been trying to help South Sudan. So I think it's a good thing. So South Sudan has been at the center, at the mediator of this misunderstanding or this crisis that has been engulfing Sudan with other. It also has the similar problems that South Sudan has, militias that really over time have grown grown and have taken over some parts of the country. And so South Sudan has been trying to negotiate and mediate and bring all these people together so that they can have, even last week, I think they signed a deal. So I think these are other holdout groups that were not part of the signing of this deal that perhaps now they're causing a lot of mayhem there in Sudan, because last week we saw a few of them come out and sign an understanding, a peace deal with the government, and say, they will support the government, they will work with the government, and they'll find other ways of engaging with the government of Sudan outside of war and causing unrest. So that is good for Sudan. But now we see it appears not everybody came to the table, and so there has been an increase of insecurity there in Darfur. And so the government of Sudan has now announced a state of emergency, has declared a state of the emergency in the western region of Darfur. And this is worrying to the African Union, is worrying to the United Nations. And let's just see that and hope that a solution will be reached there very, very soon, because we don't want to see hear any more of killings and rapes and all that, because usually that is what happens in such situations. So thank you. And we move to Nigeria, where the representative of Kaduna South Senatorial District, the National Assembly, Senator Danjuma La, on Tuesday raised a fresh concern, that is today, over the unending killings in his constituency. Now La, who raised a point of order during a plenary, lamented that his people were being massacred daily by some bandits. Why do they keep calling these people bandits? These are thugs. These are criminals. These are people who are out there to take lives and to destroy and to maim and to all the atrocities that you think about that goes against human rights. This is it, and you call them bandits. These are criminals, and they should be treated as criminals. And so, the representative of Kaduna South Senatorial District came out during a session there in Parliament, and he was lamenting and saying, the insecurity in that part of Nigeria has gone on, and the people there are suffering and now calling on the government to do something. Well, I don't know. I think there has been a lot of lamenting. There has been a lot of complaining. And I don't know, there has been a lot of silence from the part of the presidency, who is the head, the chief, what do you call him? Who is the head of the state, and also commander-in-chief, they're part of the federal state republic there in Nigeria. President Buhari has been very quiet on his part and has not been very active in addressing this matter of insecurity in Nigeria. So we are urging him to do that. I don't know if he will hear. And also still in Nigeria, doctors have started a 3-day strike over safety fears during the coronavirus. I think this is a very legitimate concern by doctors, because when you see like Kenya here, we buried the first doctor that have died from coronavirus, and it was such a sad situation, because these people are putting their lives on the forefront. So I think they should be protected. They should be absolutely be protected. So, but going also on a strike, I think, is not helping the situation, because right now is when we see a lot of countries in Africa at the peak, or just getting to the peak, or in terms of the coronavirus cases in our African countries. So a strike by our medical staff is not something that we want to hear about right now. But unfortunately, that is what is happening. But also, I hope this doesn't really happen. I hope that they take care of this very soon, because the matters that they raise here are quite legitimate, and the concerns are quite legitimate. And so, please, government of Nigeria, can you pay attention to what your people there are saying? So thank you so much. I think that is all I had for you this afternoon. I did not have so much. Thank you so much for watching. We shall meet here tomorrow again, same time, for other African news. And if you have anything that you think I need to know so that I can share with the rest of our viewers, please feel free to comment and share with us, and I'll be happy to do so. My name is Miriam Ogutu. Thank you so much, and a very good afternoon to you.
peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.